Welcome, unlucky traveler, to another tale from the warp. We are grateful for you to heed our call and join us in the joyous bliss of war and incur. Before we enter the world of Warhammer 40k, defile the bell of notification and like the carnage that you are soon to behold, so we may spread our corruption across the universe. Now open yourself up to the warp and let the chaos wash over you.
The world below was already dying, though its people did not yet know it. Hive Epithemus sprawled across the equatorial dust plains of Gora's Prime, a city of 1 billion souls stacked in rusted towers and collapsing spires. Its lights twinkled faintly through the polluted atmosphere, a constellation of ignorance and routine that pulsed against the endless dark of space. In that darkness, something watched. The Vox Umbra drifted silently in low orbit, a jagged silhouette of gunmetal and crimson lights. No running beacons, no Vox traffic, only the low growl of its reactors and the whisper of war preparations echoing through its decks. Inside, beneath flickering lumen strips and cracked aquila engravings, walked the sons of the VIII Legion, the Night Lords. Lord Kyra's Talon, once a terror squad captain during the Long War, stood before the stratagem's hololithic display. The image of the hive rotated slowly, a monstrous anthill of iron and smoke, its spires piercing the clouds, its underhive sinking into lightless oblivion. To most, it was an impossible fortress. To the Night Lords, it was home, not by birthright, but by philosophy. He spoke without looking at his warriors. Billions of souls packed into towers. Generations born in shadow. They fear the dark already. All we must do is make them remember why. A quiet rasp of laughter slithered through the room. Behind him stood his warband, the Claw of Atramenta. 43 Chaos Space Marines. Their armor a patchwork of midnight ceramite, brass, and flayed human leather. The years had warped their heraldry, but every helm still bore the rictus visage of a death's head bat, the mark of Nostramos' sons. Talon turned to Sergeant Varric, his Raptor pack leader. The warrior's armor was scarred from centuries of ambushes. Wings folded against his back like a vulture's cloak. "You will strike first," said Talon. "Take the southern spire, Hab block districts Theta through Omicron. I want their emergency Vox channels silenced before the surface batteries detect us." Varric inclined his helm. "Understood, my lord. Shall I begin the hunt?" Talon's lip curled beneath his rebreather. "Yes. Leave survivors. Just enough to tell stories." The command spread through the deck like a whisper through grave dust. Across the Vox Umbra, raptors assembled in the launch bays, chanting the low, broken litanies of the Eighth. Tech Marines murmured to the machine spirits of drop pods, lubricating couplings with the blood of slaves. Chainswords were blessed with oaths of silence, bolter rounds engraved with Nostraman runes. And through it all, the sound of the ship seemed to shift, the heartbeat of its engines aligning with the rhythm of slaughter. Kyra's Talon lingered a moment longer at the hololith, watching the hive's upper levels flicker with the glow of industry. His helm's lenses dimmed. "Fear," he whispered. "They've forgotten it. The Imperium teaches obedience, not terror. But we remember." He remembered the endless night skies of Nostromo, where lightning danced across glass towers and murder was a way of life. He remembered the cry of the condemned echoing down alleys, the taste of blood and ozone on his tongue, and the thrill of seeing the unworthy flinch at his shadow. To instill that again was no cruelty. It was justice. In the launch bay, The raptors formed a line of steel and talons. The chamber lights dimmed as the great doors opened to the void, revealing the curve of the hive world below, a bruised marble swirling with ash storms and lightning. "Begin," Talon ordered. The first drop pod screamed away, its retros igniting like a comet of blue fire. Then another, and another. The bay thundered with launch impacts as ceramite coffins hurled themselves toward the planet. Through the din, the warband chanted the ancient creed of their father. "We are the terror in the dark. We are the justice of the forgotten. We are the sons of the night, and all shall fear our coming." The Vox Umbra drifted deeper into shadow, engines silent, invisible to the Imperial augurs. The pods fell through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red, lightning clawing at their sides like vengeful ghosts. Below, the hive's night shift toiled unaware. Gangers fought, factories screamed, and a billion souls dreamed of another day. None of them saw the falling stars. None of them knew the nightmare that was coming for them. But soon, they would. The first Night Lord drop pods struck like hammers of the abyss. In the slums of Sector Theta 9, where 500,000 souls slept amid fumes and rust, the ground shook with thunder. Walls cracked. Windows shattered. The people of the lower hive, workers, thieves, and the nameless poor, awoke to the sound of falling stars. Then the stars opened. Steel petals split apart, releasing shapes too massive to comprehend. Armored giants cloaked in midnight. The air filled with ozone and the stink of scorched ceramite as the first raptors ignited their jump packs, scattering the smog into whirling cyclones of dust. Their laughter carried even through the roar of engines. Sergeant Varric touched down first, his talons punching into the ferrocrete street. Around him, 8 warriors fanned out, bolters raised, wings folded like blades. Signal confirmed. Varric voxed. THETA-9 secured. No organized resistance detected. A moment's pause, then Lord Talon's cold voice whispered back across the link. "There will be. Make them see the dark. Varric. Begin the hunt." Varric turned toward the endless sprawl of the lower hive, twisting alleys, screaming ventilation shafts, and 1,000 flickering lumen strips struggling against the gloom. He grinned behind his helm. With pleasure. The first civilians ran before the Night Lords even fired. They had lived their entire lives in fear of gangs, enforcers, starvation, and so when the monsters from the sky appeared, something in him recognized the truth. These were not angels of the Emperor. These were the shadows that stalked their dreams. Varric let them run. He watched them scramble through the smog, tripping over one another, their cries echoing through the metal canyons. A flick of his talon blade, and a severed head rolled across the floor, luminous eyes of his helm casting it in ghostly blue. "Let the scent spread," he said to his brothers. "Fear must ferment." The raptors moved as wraiths through the district, cutting power conduits, slaying Vox operators, and stringing their corpses along power lines. Their armor-mounted amplifiers projected whispers into the air, distorted, broken voices reciting fragments of prayers, or mocking the Imperial Creed. Before long, the sector's VoxNet erupted with confusion. "Command! Theta sectors lost contact. Multiple explosions. We're under attack." Requesting Arbite's intervention. Then static. Then silence. Far above, Dropships followed in the Raptor's wake, disgorging heavy infantry and mechanized support. Lord Kyra's Talon descended at the head of his Atramenta Terminators, 6 warriors clad in ancient cataphracti armor, each plate etched with screaming faces and the winged sigil of the VIII Legion. They landed in the heart of the Manufactoria district, their arrival shaking the ground like an earthquake. Servitors screamed as they were torn apart. The mortal overseers tried to flee, but were cut down by stormbolter fire that tore their bodies into red mist. Talon raised his chain glaive, a relic once belonging to a captain of the Crown of Thorns, and pointed toward the central control spire. That tower holds the Hive's defense grid relay. He said, "We take it. We silence the city's guns." After that, his helm turned toward the distant spires gleaming high above the smog. "We make the lords of this world beg for the dark. The lower Hive burns. Hours passed. Sector Theta and its neighbors were now tombs. The Night Lords moved methodically, disabling auto sentries, cutting Vox traffic, and turning the Hive's own loudspeakers into instruments of terror. From every broadcast node came the same repeating message, a whispering voice like a child's lullaby, reciting, "The night has come. The night remembers. The night will teach you fear." The civilians cowered in their habs. Enforcers tried to rally, but their leaders were dead, or worse, displayed as warnings. One patrol found an entire squad of their own strung up by their ankles over a mag rail, skin peeled away to form the symbol of a bat-winged skull. By dawn cycle, half the lower Hive had gone silent. Talon walked among the carnage, his armor glinting with oil and blood. The screams of the wounded echoed distantly, but no one dared approach. He turned to his Vox officer, Brother John, whose helm still bore the flayed mask of a commissar. "Status: all Vox relays in the southern quadrants have fallen. The Hive militia are mustering in the mid-level habs, attempting to seal the transit shafts." "Good," said Talon. "Let them gather. It will make them easier to find." He gestured to Varric, whose raptors crouched on the edge of a shattered gantry above them. "Take your Talon and cut through the Manufactoria tunnels. Drive them upward. Make them believe they can escape to the spires." "And the civilians?" Varric asked. Talon's voice was cold. "Civilians are the weapon. Drive them before you. Fear as a weapon." The Night Lords understood fear in a way no other legion ever had. They did not simply kill, they orchestrated. Every strike, every mutilated corpse, every whisper in the dark was placed with purpose. The goal was not to destroy the Hive quickly, it was to make its defenders destroy themselves. Soon, panic overtook command. Hive broadcast channels filled with contradicting orders. Hold the lower levels. Evacuate to upper Hive. Purge all heretics. Paranoia spread faster than the plague. Soldiers turned on civilians. Civilians turned on priests. And the fires spread unchecked. The Night Lords watched it all unfold from the shadows, laughing. Unseen, their armor's red optics glowing like eyes in the dark. The false dawn. By the end of the first planetary rotation, the Hive's lower levels were blacked out entirely. Talon stood atop the control spire, the wind tearing at his tattered cape of flayed skin. The horizon burned, the glow of 1,000 fires reflecting off the smog like a blood sunrise. Phase 1 complete. He voxed to the ship in orbit. A distorted voice replied through static, "The Sorcerer Vector. His warbands profit. The population's fear resonance has peaked. My lord. The warp stirs in answer. Good. Talon said softly. Then the second act begins. The spire must fall. He looked out across the ruined lower hive. And for a moment, in the glow of fire and lightning, he thought he could see Nostromo again, the endless night skies and the terrified faces below. The memory filled him with something close to peace. Then he turned, chain glaive humming, and spoke to his warriors. Let the higher hive see what the dark has wrought. Tonight, we ascend. By the second night cycle, the lower hive was no longer a city. It was a wound. Sector after sector lay in ruin. Smoke rising through torn ventilation shafts like the breath of a dying god. The stench of promethium, scorched metal, and burnt flesh clung to everything. Power grids had collapsed. Lights flickered and died. And every lumen still burning seemed to draw screams like moths to a flame. The Night Lords watched from the dark, silent, patient. Sergeant Varick's raptors hunted the alleys, driving terrified mobs before them. The refugees fled upward toward the hab rings of the mid-hive. Thinking escape possible, they didn't realize they were part of the plan. Fear had its own gravity, and the VIII Legion knew how to let it pull a city apart. Colonel Thane Velas, commander of Hive Epithymus Planetary Defense Force, had never seen such chaos. His command bunker was a storm of red-lit holo projections, half of them filled with static. Vox channels screamed with conflicting reports. He slammed a gloved hand on the console. Where is confirmation on Theta 9? Gone, sir. All contact lost. Same for Omicron and Lambda sectors. What about the Arbites? Where in the throne's name are they? Reports of their precincts burning. Sir, someone's broadcasting executions of their judges over the Hive network. Velas stared at the holo map. 3/4 of the lower hive was dark. It wasn't a battlefield, it was a graveyard. And the dead weren't staying in one place. His aide turned pale. Sir, we're picking up movement signatures along the Manufactoria tunnels. Thousands. Civilians. Mostly. Velas frowned. Fleeing the lower levels. A new signal flared across the display. Energy spikes. Dozens of them. Closing in. No. The aide whispered. Being herded. Varick stood on a gantry overlooking the mass of fleeing mortals below, thousands of them packed shoulder to shoulder in the smoke-choked tunnel. They pushed, screamed, trampled one another in their desperation to reach the upper hive gates. Above them, the raptors leapt from girder to girder, shadows against the crimson glow. Varick raised his talons and keyed the Vox to his pack. Let them think they've escaped. Then take the walls. 8 raptors dropped from the dark. Their descent punctuated by shrieking jump packs and crackling thunder. They hit the ground in the center of the panicked mob, tearing into flesh and metal alike. Bolter fire stitched through the crowd. Not to kill all, only to scatter. The raptors wanted screams. They left messages in their wake, flayed corpses impaled on warning signs. Blood scrawled across walls in jagged Nostroman runes that no one living could read. Yet everyone understood. The tunnels ran red. By dawn, Colonel Velas had lost half his PDF to desertion or madness. Reports came in of entire units abandoning their posts, others firing on civilians, the Vox filled with panicked prayers. begging for reinforcements that would never come. Then came the recordings. The Night Lords had captured the Hive's public announcement channels. Every screen and loudspeaker in the city now showed the same image, a flickering, low-lit chamber filled with chained prisoners. A figure stepped into view. Lord Kyra's Talon, armor black as the void, helm cast in the shape of a bat's skull. He spoke in a voice distorted by vox filters. Half mechanical, half human. You built your hive upon the bones of slaves. You named yourselves righteous while your poor rotted beneath you. You forgot the dark, but the dark did not forget you. He gestured behind him, and the camera panned to show a row of bound nobles. The sector governor among them. Their faces were pale, tear-streaked, eyes wide. We are the VIII Legion. We are your judgment. The feed dissolved into static as the governor's screams filled every speaker in the hive. The PDF's morale shattered. Terror in the manufactoria, while panic consumed the mid-hive. The Night Lords advanced. Atramenta Terminators tore through the manufactoria levels, using chain glaives and combi bolters to annihilate entrenched defenders. Entire platoons were reduced to meat and vapor before they could even raise their weapons. Lord Talon led from the front, each step of his massive boots cracking ferrocrete. His armor's vox emitters broadcast low, barely audible wails, the cries of the last civilians executed, distorted into endless lamentation. Behind him, servitors reassembled the corpses of the fallen into grotesque effigies, angels of the Emperor inverted, their wings of torn flesh pinned to the hive's walls. One of his warriors, Brother Harkin, knelt beside the remains of a PDF squad. They die easily, he muttered. No courage, no defiance. Talon's reply was quiet. They are not meant to fight. They are meant to see. He turned toward the distant spire that pierced the clouds above. The true prey hides in the upper hive. This is the overture. In orbit, the Vox Umbra drifted unseen behind the world's defense grid. Aboard it, the sorcerer Vector stood before a vast viewing port, eyes burning with witchlight. The psychic resonance of the hive was palpable, a pulse of terror so vast it rippled through the warp like the beating of a diseased heart. Vector smiled. It is working, he murmured. Every scream feeds the storm. He raised his staff, chanting in the long-dead tongue of Nostromo, and the warp's reflection shimmered against the planet below. Shadows thickened. The night itself seemed to deepen, pressing down upon the hive. To the mortals, it felt as though the sun had dimmed. To the Night Lords, it was home. Governor Hestian Carr had been found 2 days after his last Vox transmission, crucified to the facade of the hive's cathedral, hundreds of meters above the ground. Every pilgrim, every worker, every child who looked up at that sacred spire now saw their ruler's corpse silhouetted against the false dawn, his entrails fluttering in the toxic wind. His skull hollowed and filled with flickering lumen candles. The symbol beneath him, painted in blood, was unmistakable, the winged skull of the VIII Legion. By the 3rd day, the hive was finished, though it still burned. Though millions still lived, the will to resist had died. Civilians huddled in silence, afraid to light lamps for fear of drawing attention. The air smelled of ozone, gunpowder, and despair. In the upper levels, nobles armed their private guards and sealed their spire lifts, ignorant that the Night Lords were already among them. Lord Talon stood in the ruins of the cathedral, lightning crackling across the stained glass as wind howled through the open wounds of the hive. Brother John approached and knelt. "The lower city is ours. My lord, the survivors are begging for mercy. The governor's death has broken them." Talon's gaze never left the storm outside. "Good," he said. "Now they will watch the spire burn, and know that even the gods cannot save them." He turned, Vox clicking as he opened the warband channel. "Raptor Talon Varric, ascend. Strike from the shadows. Make them remember why mankind fears the night." The mid-hive was a twisting maze of ferrocrete alleys, manufactoria complexes, and conveyor arteries that hummed with industrial life. Smoke from the burning lower levels wove through the ventilation shafts, carrying the scent of charred flesh and fear. Here, the Night Lords thrived. Raptors moved like phantoms through the labyrinth, landing silently atop spire roofs and dropping into shafts where no human dared enter. Civilians and militia alike fled from shadows, often right into the hands of the predators. Each scream, each misstep, was a note in the symphony of terror the VIII Legion composed. Varric's squad stalked a group of mid-hive workers fleeing from the lower sector fires. They darted between machinery and catwalks, unarmed and frantic. The raptors let them run for a moment, then descended. By the time the survivors realized they were trapped, it was too late. Bolter fire stitched the air. Chainswords tore through doors and walls, and the screams echoed upward through the hive's metal veins. The dead were left in grotesque displays, impaled, strung across support beams, or posed in tableaus mocking their desperate attempts to survive. Lord Talon's Atramenta Terminators moved with equal efficiency, stalking the upper corridors of the mid-hive. Their steps were silent, but their presence was unmistakable. Guards vanished without a trace. Vox operators transmitting emergency orders were found hanged in their booths. Wires cut in patterns that spelled the winged skull of the Night Lords in red across the walls. Talon watched through the helmet lenses, observing the psychological collapse of the hive's defenders. It was slow, meticulous work. A unit of PDF enforcers attempted to hold a junction near the manufactoria lift shafts. Talon's Terminators advanced without sound. When the soldiers realized the threat, it was already too late. Bolter rounds shredded armor, chain glaives ripped through flesh, and the survivors' last moments were broadcast across stolen Vox channels to the terrified mid-hive populace. Varric, observing the chaos below, whispered to Talon via Vox. "They believe the darkness is alive." Talon's helm tilted slightly, a rare shadow of amusement flickering across his visage. "Good," he said. "Let them know it is." Intelligence gathered from captured mid-hive technicians revealed the location of the upper spire lifts, private transit reserved for the elite. The governors, magistrates, and noble families had sealed themselves behind layers of security, believing that height and wealth could protect them from the world below. They were wrong. The Night Lords infiltrated through ventilation shafts, service conduits, and abandoned maintenance tunnels. No lift, no security checkpoint, no reinforced gate could slow them. Varric led his Talon up a shaft, landing silently in the governor's private elevator room. Bolters were raised, chainswords revving with a soft mechanical growl. The nobles inside screamed when the door splintered. But it was too late. Each one of them was captured, humiliated, or worse. used as a message to the city below. Talon observed the operation from a nearby observation deck, chainsword in hand. Fear is the ladder, he murmured to himself, and we climb it, step by step. The mid-hive had become a place without sanctuary. Smoke swirled through the streets and corridors, amplified by the fires below. The Night Lords moved within it like ghosts, striking from angles unseen. Every survivor encountered them felt a presence, glimpsed a shadow in the corner of their vision, or heard a whisper across the void of the hallway, and fled blindly, often to their doom. Talon's Vox emitters carried the last, maddening words of the governor to every screen, every terminal, every public loudspeaker in the mid-hive. The Night Lords are here. They know your fear, and they will never forget. By the end of the second day in the mid-hive, the PDF had ceased organized resistance. Units had fragmented, turning on one another, panicking, or abandoning post entirely. Civilians fled in all directions, sometimes into raptor ambushes, sometimes into traps they themselves inadvertently created. The Night Lords watched from the dark, satisfied. Their goal was not merely killing, it was the breakdown of structure, the collapse of morale, the transformation of fear into a palpable, living weapon. Talon walked among the remains of one collapsed hab block, his helmet catching the flickering red of fires below. Soon, he said to Varric, we take the spire, and the lesson will be complete. High above the mid-hive, the sorcerer Vector observed the resonance of fear feeding into the warp. It shimmered and twisted, a palpable tension of terror and suffering. This is the way of Nostromo, he said, voice echoing through the command deck. We strike the mind before we strike the flesh. Let the psychic storm build. Below, the Night Lords advanced, shadows and fire, steel and terror, carrying the first whispers of the city's ultimate collapse. The upper spires of Hive Epithemus pierced the clouds like jagged fingers, shining in the pale light filtered through ash and smoke. They were monuments to imperial arrogance, elegant, fortified, and, as the Night Lords knew, fragile. Raptor Talon Varric led the first wave, landing silently atop a service gantry connecting two spires. The wind was a knife, carrying the distant screams and burning scents from the mid-hive below. From this height, the city looked orderly, but that was only because the terror had yet to reach the highest echelons. Let's remind them, Varric muttered to his Talon. He keyed the Vox. Phase 2 begins. Move. The upper spire was heavily guarded. Elite PDF units and private mercenaries patrolled the corridors. The governor's personal security was layered behind reinforced gates and biometric locks. The Night Lords bypassed all of it. Vents, maintenance tunnels, and precarious walkways became avenues for death. Varric and his squad struck silently, leaving bodies in grotesque tableaus, nobles impaled on service conduits, their faces twisted in terror, blood spelling the Legion's mark across walls. Every survivor who witnessed the carnage became an instrument of panic, running to warn their peers, only to encounter the next ambush. Governor Hestian Carr waited behind the innermost layer of defense, surrounded by his closest advisors and bodyguards. His pale face twisted with disbelief as Vox feeds relayed the carnage below. Seal the elevators, he shouted. Arm the defenses. They cannot reach us. Outside, Bolter fire erupted against outer perimeters. Atramenta terminators tore through the remaining checkpoints, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the spire. Chainswords and lightning claws carved swaths through reinforced steel, while bolters tore apart armors designed to withstand Imperial ordnance. Talon's voice came through the central Vox network, distorted and booming. Hestian Ka, governor of Epithemus, you thought height and wealth could save you. Fear is not bound to the low. Fear climbs. The Night Lords moved like a living shadow. Raptors leaped from walkways, landing on roofs and balconies with the screech of jump packs. They struck silently, then vanished. Atramenta terminators shattered doors, flooding corridors with fire and death. The governor's advisors tried to coordinate a defense, but each plan failed. Panic spread faster than any missile. Talon walked through the bloodied halls of the upper spire, chainsword humming, aura of command in every movement. At each turn, he left a signature. Dead guards posed in grotesque mockeries, blood smeared with the insignia of the Legion. Above him, lightning crackled along the spire's external conduits, casting long, shifting shadows. It looked almost alive, like the city itself was screaming. The final confrontation came in the governor's private chamber, high above the city. Talon entered with 6 Atramenta terminators. Hestian Ka cowered behind a barricade of reinforced panels, flanked by his personal guard. Yield, Talon said, his voice cold, emotionless, or your people will suffer more. The governor's response was defiance. You will not touch me. Talon simply raised his chain glaive. The guards fired. Bolters spat. But the terminators advanced unflinchingly. In moments, the chamber was filled with smoke, fire, and death. Guards fell. The governor tried to escape through a window, but Talon's blade met him mid-leap, impaling him through the chest and pinning him against the wall. Talon stepped closer. Look upon your city, he said. See what happens when you forget the dark. Above the spire, the first rays of a false dawn broke through the ash. The fires of the lower hive reflected in the governor's wide, dying eyes. Talon left him there, a tableau for the entire hive to see, a lesson of terror made manifest. Vox networks across Hive Epithemus broadcast the scene. Screens flickered with the governor's corpse, the Atramenta terminators standing motionless behind him. The message was unmistakable. The Night Lords have come. No spire is safe. No ruler is beyond our reach. Remember the dark, for we do. The city below trembled, from mid-hive to upper spire. The message was received with silent, primal terror. Soldiers deserted. Nobles barricaded themselves in futile isolation. Civilians prayed to gods that would not answer. The Night Lords had accomplished more than destruction. They had achieved something far rarer. A hive united in fear. Talon stood on the apex of the spire, looking down at the ruined city. Smoke, fire, and death stretched as far as the eye could see. Phase 3 complete. He murmured. The lesson has been delivered. Fear will linger long after we are gone. Varric landed beside him. And the survivors. My lord. Talon's eyes scanned the horizon. Let them remember. Let them whisper our name. That is their punishment. Behind them, the Atramenta terminators moved silently through the shadows, guardians of a lesson written in blood. The Night Lords had struck Hive Epithemus. And in the end, the Hive itself would never be the same. From the apex of the governor's spire, the Night Lords surveyed their work. Fires still burned in the lower hive. Smog hung thick over the mid-levels. And the upper spire, once a bastion of imperial pride, was hollowed with terror. Yet this was only the beginning. Talon's Vox channels flickered across the city. Every loudspeaker, every public display, every stolen transmission carried the same message. We are the dark your forefathers feared. We are the shadow you cannot outrun. Remember this day. Remember the Night Lords. Below, the population writhed in panic. Soldiers, enforcers, and nobles alike were fractured, leaderless, and terrified. Civilians refused to light fires, fearing the gaze of the shadows above. Talon's victory was not measured in bodies alone, it was in minds. Fear had become a weapon more potent than bolters, more absolute than any siege. Varric led his Talon through the upper spire's corridors, hunting the last pockets of resistance. Every soldier who attempted to fight was met with a ghostly assault. Shadows falling from ceilings, chainswords revving from unseen angles, bolters cracking with surgical precision. Each encounter reinforced the message. Resistance was pointless. Survival depended on submission. Talon moved among them like a specter, chainsword humming, boots silent on cracked flooring. Every step was a reminder that the Night Lords were not merely killers, they were inevitability. The Night Lords did not need to kill every last soul to conquer the hive. They employed fear as a living, breathing force. They displayed the governor's death in public squares, twisted the bodies of guards into grotesque warnings, and broadcast the lamentations of survivors across every Vox channel. The inhabitants began to see threats in shadows, to hear whispers where none existed. Paranoia consumed them. Mid-level commanders turned on one another. Families barricaded themselves and starved, terrified that the shadows would enter even their private chambers. Talon smiled beneath his helm. It is always better when they fear themselves more than us, he said. Varric nodded. They are learning. Talon's voice was low, deadly, reverent. Yes, and that is the true power of the Night Lords. In orbit, Vector's psychic presence fed on the hive's fear. The warp shimmered, warped, and pulsed with anguish, echoing the terror of millions. Perfect, he said. The resonance is complete. The hive is ours before we even touch the ground again. They will tell tales of the shadows, and those tales will haunt generations. The psychic storm radiated from Hive Epithemus into the surrounding system, leaving the Imperium's senses scrambled and corrupted. Talon gathered the warband in the governor's former chamber, now a hall of shadows and corpses. He surveyed the Atramenta Terminators and Raptors, each scarred from battle, each a conduit of terror perfected. Remember, he said, voice resonating through the hall. We do not merely kill. We do not merely conquer. We teach. And this hive, he gestured to the city below, glowing red in fires and smoke, will remember forever what it means to fear the night. Varric lowered his helm slightly in acknowledgement. Shall we leave them, my lord? Talon considered the hive's broken streets, its fractured defenses, the shadows of death lingering in every alley. Not yet, he said. Let the lesson settle. Let it grow. He paused, voice dropping to a whisper, almost intimate. Fear is eternal. Fear is the night, and we are its children. By the time the Night Lords departed Hive Epithemus, The city was alive only in terror. The lower hive was smoldering, the mid-hive silent, and the upper spire abandoned by all who could flee or hide. Every survivor carried a memory that would never fade, the echo of shadows, the taste of inevitable death, the message of the winged skull. Talon stood on the Vox Umbra's prow as the hive shrank below them, engulfed in smoke and ash. The warband behind him, silent and motionless, reflected the calm after the storm of terror. Another lesson delivered, he murmured. Another world remembers Nostromo. The Night Lords faded into the void, leaving the Imperium's hive to whisper their name for generations. The Night Lords have come, and they remember the dark. Weeks later, Imperial investigators returned to Hive Epithemus. Fires had been extinguished, and life had resumed, but the hive's soul had been scarred. Population figures were down, civic morale shattered, and the collective memory of terror endured. Even decades later, survivors spoke in hushed tones about shadows that moved independently, whispers in the vents, and a dark presence that watched from the spire tops. The Night Lords had departed, but the lesson lingered. Fear is eternal, and the VIII Legion always remembers.